Okay everyone, I'm back with another video review. Like the title says, this is going to be my review of the Unique Melody ME.1 planar magnetic in-ear earphone. So before I get into the whole video, I wanted to firstly thank Lawrence, not at iFi but at Unique Melody, for providing this unit for me to listen to for the last couple months. It's been a very exciting last few months, and I really do like the sound of this product. But before I jump into the sound and what this is, I just wanted to give you guys an overview of who Unique Melody is. Before even getting into contact with Lawrence, I had heard about Unique Melody before, but I didn't know too much about their background history and how they were kind of started. So back in 2007, Unique Melody was founded by some people who were in the audio care industry from Phonak, and they're known for making like cochlear implants and hearing aids. So Unique Melody kind of started off modifying products from Shure, Westone, and Ultimate Ears, and so they kind of did some reshelling services back in the time. And then in 2008, they started to make their own custom in-ear monitors for more of the audio enthusiast market rather than the pro audio market, like now Jerry Harvey Audio, Ultimate Ears, Westone, Shure, and so on. And so they were kind of making products for the audio enthusiast. And they actually have a sister company called Ruth, and they kind of get some trickle-down technology from that company and they implement it into their own in-ear earphones. And Unique Melody is kind of known for their Merlin in-ear earphone, which is a hybrid design, meaning it has both a dynamic driver and a balanced armature driver. And they're also known for their Miracle custom in-ear monitor, which I have actually heard before in previous Seattle Head-Fi meets. So moving over to 2017 now, they've created this in-ear earphone, the ME.1, and it's actually a planar magnetic headphone. So just to give you guys a brief overview of how planar magnetic headphones work, instead of a dynamic driver which uses a magnet and a moving coil to push a diaphragm, and instead of an electrostatic headphone where it has a thin membrane surrounded by two metal stators that are electrically charged, and then depending on the voltage of those stators and the diaphragm, it moves the diaphragm in a linear fashion. A planar magnetic headphone uses a also very thin linear piece of plastic, and then on that thin piece of plastic they'll have some metal traces on them, and then surrounding the diaphragm are usually two sets of magnets as well. So those magnets will have an isomagnetic field, pushes and pulls the driver similar to an electrostatic driver, and then that makes the air motion that you eventually hear. And so planar magnetic and electrostatic technologies are similar in that they provide a planar wavefront of air, so very linear, usually very low distortion signal from your in-ear earphones or headphones. So getting into what's in the box, I didn't actually get a box provided for me, but they gave me the box contents. So inside of what would be the box, you would get this cleaning cloth for your in-ears. You also get the silicone ear tips, standard small, medium, large sizes, as well as some foam ear tips, which I have been mostly using because they provide a consistent seal for my ears. These are small, medium, large as well. And then also you'll get a airline adapter, so two mono jacks connected to make a stereo signal, 6.5 millimeter headphone adapter, or also 1/4 inch jack, and also a in-ear earphone cleaner, so to get rid of any buildup of earwax. Then also you get this nice silicone case to protect your in-ears, and it has a very nice design where you can wind the cable around this core, and then on the inside you can put your earphones. Pretty cool. So let's just get this unwound. So the if you can notice on the camera, this cable is actually two different colors. Let's see if it can get it to focus. There's a kind of copper colored cable and there's a silver colored cable. And this is actually a hybrid design cable, so it's both copper and silver. So it's a very high quality cable that you get to use with these in your earphones. And it's got the best of both worlds of both copper and silver. Not really too big into cable materials per se, because different cables can sound a little bit different depending on their impedance, and not everybody does impedance matching, so it's hard to judge whether or not the actual cable sounds different or if it's just the difference in volume. But just this cable itself is very well built, and it's a high quality cable, so I'm pretty happy with its build quality. In the center here you can see the Y split, so this is actually a 16 braided cable and it splits into two 8-wire cables. So each earphone, each earpiece receives those 8 wires. You got copper silver for the positive signal, copper silver for the ground signal, and then on the other side you can also get the copper silver for the positive signal and the copper silver for the ground signal. So it's a very well made cable. I believe this is one of the cables that Unique Melody actually makes in-house, so it's very nicely made, all custom made for them, their products. So anyway, going on to the earphone itself, you can see that it's an open back design based on the giant grill on the back here, and then it's also got a vent here. This is not a bass port, this is actually an acoustic pressure valve release, I guess. So in theory, when you have the in-ear in your ear, this port will allow the acoustic pressure to equalize within the ear canal, which is kind of a big deal. The Adele technology that you may have heard about kind of does a similar thing. Supposedly in your ear, when you have a sealed in your earphone, it will create a pressure in your ear canal that will be bad for your eardrum. That will cause bass pressures to build up and activate your stapedius reflex, which is the reflex that you usually get when you hear a very loud signal. And that's bad for both the signal that you hear from your inner earphone as well as the health of your overall hearing system. So supposedly having this pressure release port will alleviate that pressure from the ear canal. But that being said, this is an open back earphone, so the design of that doesn't seem very intuitive to me, but maybe it makes a bigger difference than if it was just an open back earphone by itself. So just keep that in mind. If you remove the ear tip, you can look inside and you can see this metal spiral thing. That's just kind of a anti-earwax buildup port, I guess, cover. Nothing too special about that. And then if you look in the earphone itself, if the camera can focus, you can see a similar metal coil. I'm not sure if those are the traces on the driver, but the driver does have 12 neodymium magnets. So as part of the planar magnetic design, it will have the metal traces going either, I guess, in the spiral in this case, on the driver. And then you'll have the set of magnets surrounding the driver. So they're usually bar magnets. So there's 6 pairs of neodymium bar magnets in this case, and those will surround the diaphragm with the traces on them. So it creates that esoteric magnetic field within the earphone assembly, within the driver assembly. And then if you remove this plug, this removable cable, you can see that it has a 2-pin connection, very similar to the Ultimate Ears cable connectors. So it's a 2-pin connection there. And just like the Ultimate Ears in your earphones, it has a memory wire. So it's very easy to wrap around your ear and keep it in place. So it's very nice design with that memory wire. And this custom made cable that Unique Melody does reduces the microphonics a lot. So even if you're jogging, you don't really hear the microphonics of the cable rubbing on your clothing. So that's really good. So speaking of the sound, I'm going to now talk about how it sounds. So for me, I was mostly interested in hearing these ME.1 in-ear earphones. One, because it's a planar magnetic in-ear, and those are very few in numbers at the current state of the audio industry. The bigger ones are the Odyssey iSign 10 and the Odyssey iSign 20, as well as their top-of-the-line LCD i4. Now, I've heard all of those before, and I'm not going to make any direct comparisons because I don't have those units with me right now to compare them side by side, but I have heard them in the past, and generally I've only liked the iSign series when it has the cipher cable attached to it, and because I don't own an iDevice, I unfortunately can't use the cipher cable. So for me, the iSign has never really been an option for me. You can use it with the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack cable, but to me it has a compromise in sound quality because the cipher cable was actually meant to be a DSP addition to the iSign series. So those cipher cables enhance the quality of sound that you get for the iSign series, and with the 3.5 millimeter jack you don't get that DSP. So for me, the next best alternative would be the ME.1. So if I were to purchase an in-ear that is open back, that is planar magnetic, then this would be the next option in my lineup. Odyssey does have their LCD i4, but that's insanely expensive, and I don't want to pay a lot for an open back in-ear earphone that kind of has a niche use anyway. So for me, the Unique Melody ME.1 makes a good alternative for what's out there at the current moment. So talking about this and how it sounds, I'm not gonna make any direct comparisons with the Odyssey iSign, but if you're interested, you can leave a comment and see what I think about it versus that, based on what I have heard previously. So talking about the ME.1, let's just start off with its overall sound signature. Overall, it's kind of a warm tilted frequency response, so it has a little bit of more bass presence and less of the treble presence. The treble presence isn't nearly as extended compared to my Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered, but I don't think these were meant to be a perfectly linear sound, more of an enjoyable experience. And in between the lows and the highs, there's a mid-range, and the mid-range does have a peak at around 6 kilohertz to my ears that kind of makes it sound bright, which can be good in some cases, like especially if you're looking for a monitor for vocals. Usually I look for earphones for monitoring vocals. I would like to have a slight emphasis at around the 1 to 2 kilohertz or the 6 kilohertz area, as long as it's not too bad. In this case, for that region, I do need a little bit of EQ to make it a little bit flatter sounding, but if you want to monitor like violins or female vocals, this would be great without an EQ by itself. So more specifically talking about the bass is pretty well extended. I feel that it rolls off a little bit towards the sub bass area. So if you use an EQ, boosting that will actually make it sound nice and oomphy. It doesn't have the typical planar magnetic impact of bass that I'm kind of used to, but it sounds very good overall, very clean and linear sounding. Going into the mid-range, again, it's kind of a warm tilted frequency response, so the mid-range does sound pretty warm, which works out very well for male vocals and lower harmonic instruments. And so especially for like piano music or guitar music, this sounds great with the ME.1's overall frequency response. So moving up into the mid-range, it's actually pretty flat, so I don't find any issues with it. But then moving into the upper mid-range a little bit again, where the 1 to 2 kilohertz is, as well as the 5 to 6 kilohertz area, I did need to use a little bit of EQ to make it sound more linear and flat to me. So this is kind of the EQ that I've been using. So at 1 kilohertz, this is from J River Media Center. So from 1 kilohertz to 6 kilohertz there, I used those EQ adjustments. So minus 1 dB at 1 kilohertz, minus 1.5 at 3 kilohertz, and minus 3 at the 6 kilohertz. Again, I find that there's a peak at around the 6 kilohertz area for my ears, so I needed the most amount of EQ there to make it sound a little bit more flat and neutral to my ears. Similar to what I would hear in the Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered, as well as my Stax SR207. So with that EQ, it sounds very flat to me. But by itself, it's a little bit bright, which can be good for monitoring instruments or vocals in that area. So moving on to the treble then, the treble is actually very smooth. Similar to my Stax, I can definitely hear details in the treble, and it's not strident at all, so it's not sibilant. It doesn't have a tizzy sound to it that's unbearable like some planar magnetic designs that I've heard before, so that's really good. It has a nice smooth treble response without losing a lot of details. That being said, like I had mentioned before, there is a roll-off of treble, so you don't quite get the extension and air that you would from one that has, well, better extension up there. So this does have a rolled off treble, which can sound pretty good, especially if you're not looking for, or especially if you're looking for a earphone that does not sound strident or that does not have a lot of treble emphasis. Because of the rolled off treble, and that transitions into the soundstage a little bit. So the soundstage is a little bit closed in, especially considering that this is an open back in-ear earphone. I was kind of expecting a larger soundstage. It does sound pretty big, but it's not as open as I was expecting it to sound. So it does sound more open than a lot of in-ear earphones, but it's not as open as, like, say, an HD 800 or a regular open back headphone. So it's not quite that same experience, but it does sound more open. The imaging is still pretty accurate in terms of where it's supposed to be placed in the soundstage. So some of my test tracks have very specific cues for where they are located in the three-dimensional space, but they don't quite have the separation that I'm normally used to hearing with the reference remastered or my Stax setup. So it doesn't quite have the solidness that you would see in each image. It's more a little bit blurred between the different instruments within the soundstage. So not bad, but still pretty good overall. So it's a strong, one of the stronger points of the in-ear earphones is that it's an open back, so it's able to vent, I guess, the back wave, instead of having it being introduced back into the sound driver, and then you would be able to hear that as well. So having this open back design does improve the ability to have imaging within a three-dimensional space better, in my experience. So with all that being said, do I think it's worth the price? So this is priced at $750, and it is on the pricier end of what I would consider to be affordable for in-ear earphones especially. And it is kind of a niche design. It is an open back design, so it doesn't completely isolate you from the world, and your music is not completely isolated to your ears. But there's actually a filter in here, and you can't really see it. It's a piece of felt, I believe, and it helps isolate the sound coming out. So it prevents a lot of noise leaking. Only if I turn it up to really loud volumes do I hear kind of the sound coming out of the in-ear earphones from, say, 2 meters away. So the noise leakage issue isn't big, but it doesn't isolate you from the outside world. So using this is kind of a niche product, and this goes with the Odyssey iSign series as well. It's a very niche kind of product. I think that most people would want isolation from the outside world for an inner earphone. Like if you go on an airplane, most people use inner earphones or noise canceling headphones because it has great isolating properties from the outside world. You don't want to hear the engine noise, or you don't want to hear the people talking around you. So having an open back inner earphone is kind of a very unique situation for somebody who is looking to buy this. So for me, I've been using this kind of everywhere, so just trying to see kind of the best case for it. I did use it on the train. I do use it outside while walking around the city. I do use it at home, of course, and I find that contrary to what I had originally thought an open back inner earphone would be useful for, or not useful rather, which is to have the isolation from your surrounding world, I actually do find that having less isolation is kind of good because it allows you to stay connected to the world. So if somebody's talking to you, you can still have these in and you can just have a normal conversation with them. You don't necessarily have to pull them out of your ear and say, what? Can you say that again? So it's kind of nice to have the open back design, especially at home. You get a little bit more fidelity, as I had mentioned with the open back design, is that you get the back wave not coming back into your ear like most inner earphones would. So having that kind of design improves the fidelity of the sound. And if you're listening to this at home, chances are you're going to have a pretty well-controlled environment. So you're not going to be having a lot of outside noise coming in, and you can still have the fidelity of an open back headphone within your ear. So that's kind of a nice design to have. Although it doesn't isolate the background noise as a lot of people might think you want from an in-ear earphone, I think being connected with the world does have some merits to being aware of your surroundings. So I know there are some dangers in having loud inner earphones and being isolated from the world, and then some accident happens and blah blah blah. So having kind of this open back design helps with that, in my opinion. And of course the acoustic filtering to equalize the pressure between your ear canal and your ear is kind of nice to have as well, similar to the Adele technology, or in 64 Audio's case, their TIA driver. So all of this kind of equalization of pressure to help alleviate the kind of biological stresses that would be put on your ear canal and your eardrum and your whole hearing system, that helps reduce things in the long run. And I think preserving the health of your hearing is very important. So do I think it's worth the $750? I do. So having a little bit of EQ, like I had mentioned before with the 1 and 3 and 6 kilohertz EQ, having that EQ makes this sound a lot more flat. So if you're in an environment where you can use an EQ, I think that definitely helps the fidelity of these inner earphones. And if you've ever heard the Odyssey LCD2 pre-phaser with rock music, it sounds phenomenal. And you get that same effect with these with that EQ, and it's just awesome to listen to. So that's one of the biggest compliments I can give for the ME.1, is that with that EQ, it sounds like a freaking LCD2. And that is really cool to be able to have that in your ear in the shape and form factor of an in-ear earphone. And that is just really great because obviously the LCD2 is huge and it's kind of uncomfortable for a lot of people. Having this in your earphone with the security of these foam tips in your ear, walking around your house or walking in public with the sound quality of the LCD2 is just an amazing feat of technology. And that kind of demonstrates how you can get the sound quality in such a small form factor and still preserve all that fidelity. So yes, I do think it is worth the $750 if you're in a case like me where you do want to stay connected with the outside world, where you do want to preserve some of your hearing with the acoustic port there, and you want the fidelity of a full-size open back planar magnetic headphone in your ear. So thank you guys for watching my review of the Unique Melody ME.1. If you guys have any questions, especially if you're concerned about how it sounds compared to the other earphones out there, mainly the iSign 10 and the iSign 20, you can leave a comment below. Otherwise, thanks for watching and see you guys again.